If you've ever spent an hour mentally rehearsing a conversation that never happens, or played out a catastrophic work scenario in your head on a loop, you know the feeling. It's not just worry. It feels like work, like you're solving a problem. And that's the first thing to understand about people who imagine fake scenarios. This isn't a random glitch in your mood. It's a system, a problem-solving system that has, quite literally, gone off the rails. Let's make it concrete. Meet Alex. Alex is a competent professional, but tomorrow has a quarterly review with their manager. The meeting is real. The preparation is real. But as Alex tries to focus, their brain launches a side quest. What if they bring up that project delay from last month? What if I blank on the data? What if this is actually a prelude to letting me go? This cascade isn't daydreaming. To your brain, each what if is a legitimate threat that has just been identified. And the brain's primary directive is to neutralize threats. So it starts working. It simulates the fake scenario, runs through dialogues, imagines counterarguments, and rehearses emotional reactions. It is, by its own logic, diligently problem-solving. But the cost is immediate and steep. The mental energy allocated to solving these imaginary problems is stolen from the very real task at hand. Alex's focus shatters. The calm required for clear judgment evaporates. They are now exhausted, anxious, and no better prepared for the actual meeting. The system has backfired. This is the universal mechanic. The brain mistakes imagination for reconnaissance and treats fiction as a fire drill. It's a maladaptive loop, a system designed for survival hijacked to generate its own threats. And if the engine is this sophisticated in its failure, then understanding its machinery is our first step to changing its course. So what's actually happening inside that jammed gearbox? Why does the brain treat a fictional argument with your boss as a threat on par with a predator in the tall grass? The answer lies in two specific, well-researched psychological mechanisms. The first is called repetitive thought. In a seminal 2008 review, psychologist Ed Watkins outlined how repetitive thought isn't inherently bad. It's how we plan and solve problems. But it has a maladaptive cousin, abstract, evaluative rumination. Here's the split. Concrete, process-focused thought asks, what are the exact steps to prepare for this meeting? It's grounded, actionable, and finite. Abstract, evaluative rumination asks, what does it mean that I'm so nervous? What if I fail? What will that say about me? It's not about steps. It's about spinning narratives of identity, threat, and meaning. This is the engine of the fake scenario. Your brain isn't just recalling a memory or planning a task. It's constructing a story about your potential future, and it's evaluating that story against your deepest fears about competence and belonging. And because it's a story about you, the brain's second mechanism kicks in: threat simulation. Neuroscientist Antti Raivanchuo's research on the function of dreaming suggests our brains evolved to simulate threatening events during sleep, a kind of nocturnal fire drill to prepare us for real danger. The modern mind, however, runs this simulation software during waking hours. When you imagine your boss dismissing your idea, your amygdala, the brain's threat detector, doesn't check the source. It receives the vivid sensory and emotional data of the imagined scenario and reacts as if the threat is present and real. Cortisol and adrenaline spike. Your heart rate increases. Your focus narrows to the danger. This creates a perfect, self-sustaining loop. The abstract rumination generates a threatening story. The threat simulation system treats it as real, triggering stress. That stress then makes your thinking more abstract and catastrophic, searching for more what-ifs to solve. It's a neurological hijacking. Your problem-solving prefrontal cortex is now in service of a fiction, using your body's finite emotional and attentional bandwidth to fight a phantom. This is why, after an hour of mental rehearsal, Alex feels exhausted but has written nothing. The real work requires calm, sustained focus. But his cognitive resources have been spent on an internal civil war. Understanding this machinery isn't just academic. It reveals the critical flaw in the system. The loop depends on the brain fusing with the story, mistaking the simulation for reconnaissance. And that flaw points directly to the single move that can jam the gears. That point of fusion, where the story becomes the threat, is the critical pressure point. And the single move that jams the gears is called cognitive defusion. It's a term from acceptance and commitment therapy, and it describes the simple act of creating psychological distance between you and the thought. Instead of being in the story, the anxious presenter, the rejected friend, you step back and observe the story as a story. You see the machinery at work. The brain's threat simulation depends on that fusion. It needs you to buy the ticket and take the ride. Defusion is the moment you look at the ticket and say, this is for a show that isn't playing. The fastest way to do this is with a simple, immediate ritual. We call it the 3-minute reality check. It's not about arguing with the thought or solving the fake problem. It's about grounding your attention in present evidence. Step 1. Name the process. Out loud or in your head. I'm catastrophizing. Or, there's the problem-solving loop again. This isn't self-criticism. It's a neutral observation, like a pilot noting a system light. Step 2. Engage your senses. Right here, right now. Name 5 things you can see. Feel the texture of the desk under your palms. Listen for the most distant sound in the room. This isn't mindfulness for its own sake. It's a deliberate data download for your brain. You're feeding it concrete, present-moment information that overrides the abstract, future-based threat simulation. You're answering the brain's "what's wrong?" alarm with a report from the here and now. Step 3. Ask the defusion question. What is actually true right now? Not in the imagined future. Right now? Is the document blank? Yes. Is my boss currently yelling at me? No. Am I safe at my desk? Yes. This 3-minute ritual breaks the loop because it attacks the fusion directly. You're not the character in the catastrophic play anymore. You're the stage manager, noting the set, the props, the fact that the curtain is still closed. The fake scenario loses its emotional charge because you've removed its fuel, your fused attention. The gears of threat simulation spin without catching. For Alex, this looks like stopping, saying, there's the meeting spiral, feeling his feet on the floor, and noting the single, true task, a blank document that needs words. The imagined conference room evaporates. All that's left is the real work. This anchor isn't a permanent fix. The loop will try to restart. The brain's problem-solving instinct is persistent, which is why breaking the loop is only the first move. The next move is what you do with the attention and calm you've just reclaimed. So you've broken the loop. You've named the simulation, grounded yourself in the room, and found the single, true task. The relief is real. But it's also temporary, because the brain's problem-solving machinery doesn't just shut off. It's a default setting. It will, in a few minutes or a few hours, try to restart the simulation. The question isn't if it will happen again, but what you do when it does. This is where we move from a defensive tactic, breaking the loop, to a proactive discipline. The discipline of redirected focus. It's the practice of training your attention, not just away from the fake scenario, but towards something specific, chosen, and productive. The strategy is brutally simple, if-then planning. If I notice my mind starting to spin up a fake argument with my boss, then I will immediately open my project tracker and review the next actionable step. If I catch myself mentally rehearsing a social disaster, then I will stand up and make a cup of tea, focusing only on the sound of the kettle, the weight of the mug. The if is your anchor moment. The then is your deliberate redirect. This isn't about willpower. It's about neural wiring. Every time you successfully execute that then, you are doing something profound. You are weakening the default mode network's catastrophic pathways and strengthening the executive control network. You are teaching your brain, through repetition, that the signal for threat does not get priority processing. The real work gets it instead. Think of it like a path through a field. The catastrophic loop is a deep, muddy rut your brain has worn from overuse. Standing at the edge and saying, "I won't go down there," doesn't change the rut. You have to start walking a new path, right next to it, over and over. The first few times are awkward. You might slip back into the old rut. But with each pass, the new path becomes clearer, firmer, more automatic. This is why the redirect must be small and immediate. You're not trying to solve world hunger after breaking a worry spiral. You're trying to type one email, review one line of code, wash one dish. The victory is in the shift itself, the conscious transfer of cognitive resources from a fictional problem to a real one, however minor. And with each small victory, you're not just getting work done. You're building a more fundamental identity. You are gathering evidence. Not that you're a person who never imagines fake scenarios, but that you are a person who, when the simulation starts, knows how to find their way back to reality. The loop will try to restart, but now you have a discipline for the restart, and that discipline, repeated, begins to change who you understand yourself to be. That discipline, repeated, is how you build the identity. It's the shift from seeing yourself as someone who is trying not to catastrophize to someone who is a non-catastrophizer. And that's a crucial distinction. The first is a battle you're constantly losing. The second is a skill you're constantly practicing. A non-catastrophizer isn't a person who never imagines a fake scenario. That's impossible. The machinery we talked about in Chapter 2 is built in. It's going to spin up. The identity is defined by what happens next. It's the person whose self-concept is built on the reliable choice to return to the anchor, to execute the if-then redirect. Every time you name the simulation, ground yourself with a 3-minute reality check and redirect your focus to a single concrete task. You are not just managing a thought. You are gathering evidence. Evidence for a new story about yourself. I am the kind of person who, when my mind starts writing fiction, knows how to find the facts. This is where the practice stops being a tactic and becomes a trait. Behavioral psychology shows us that actions shape identity, but identity also fuels action. It's a reinforcing loop. When you see yourself as a non-catastrophizer, the next loop doesn't feel like a personal failure or a sign you're broken. It feels like the starting bell for a skill you're good at. The pressure changes. The anxiety of, oh no, it's happening again, is replaced by the calm focus of, okay, I know this drill. The judgment you need under pressure isn't clouded by shame. This identity becomes your lasting anchor. It's not a specific ritual you might forget, but a foundational part of how you operate. It's the difference between holding a map in a storm and knowing the terrain by heart. So the culmination of this entire psychological journey isn't an empty mind. It's a trustworthy one. One that can host a catastrophic simulation without being hijacked by it. You are building the identity of someone whose judgment remains steady not because they never imagine chaos, but because they have a proven, disciplined path back to order. That is the psychology of the person who imagines fake scenarios and chooses, again and again, to return to what's real.